The Rooster and the Sultan, a Hungarian fairy tale. Once on a time there lived a very poor old woman who had nothing at all in the world except one little small rooster. The rooster was scratching the ground one day looking for something to eat, when suddenly what should he find but a shiny penny. Now it changed just then that a big fat man came along. He was called the Sultan of the land of Turkey, and he came strutting up the street wearing big baggy pantaloons, red shoes with upturned toes, and a bright red turban on his head. Well, the Sultan noticed the penny glittering there in the dust, and he said to the little small rooster, "Rooster, give me that penny." But the little small rooster said, "No, I will give it to my mistress, this penny, for she is poor and needs it." Then the Sultan snatched the penny away from the little small rooster. He stuck up his nose in the air, and he marched off home with the penny. The rooster was ready to cry, but he gave himself a good shake. He ruffled up his feathers as if getting ready to fight. He lifted his head up high, and he hurried after the Sultan, and he hopped up on the fence. "Cock-a-doodle-doo!" he cried. "Give me back my penny!" What a noise! The Sultan clapped his hands to his ears. He ran as fast as he could to the most distant room in his great big enormous palace, but the little small rooster followed him and perched on his window sill. "Cock-a-doodle-doo!" he cried. "Give me back my penny!" The Sultan got angrier and angrier. He called the slave and said, "Get that rooster, slave, and throw him into the well." So the slave went and caught the rooster, and bang! He plopped him in the well. But the rooster kept his wits about him and began to say a charm. "Suck the water up my throat, suck the water, all the water, suck the water up." So the little small rooster's throat sucked up all the water, and he was safe on the dry ground. Then he flew to the Sultan's window, and once again he cried, "Cock-a-doodle-doo! Give me back my penny!" Well, the Sultan was in a rage. He called the slave and said, "Go, slave, get the rooster and throw him in the fire." So the slave caught the little rooster and threw him into a roaring fire. But the little small rooster cried, "Pour the water out my throat, all the water, pour it. Put this big fire out." Instantly his throat poured out all the water from the well into the leaping flames, and the fire died down with a hiss, and the rooster was safe again. Then he flew to the Sultan's window and cried as he had before, "Cock-a-doodle-doo! Give me back my penny!" Well, the Sultan was now so angry he couldn't think of what to do next. But he called a slave and said, "Go, slave, get that rooster and throw him into a beehive. The bees will sting him well. That'll end his terrible crowing." So the slave caught the rooster again and threw him in a beehive. But the rooster started singing, "Suck the bees my throat, suck the bees all up, suck the bees all up." Then his throat sucked up the bees, and the little rooster rushed again to the Sultan's window. "Cock-a-doodle-doo!" he cried. "Give me back my penny!" The Sultan was beside himself. He went raving mad. "Bring that rooster to me," he thundered. So the slave went, caught the rooster, and brought him before the Sultan. And the Sultan, at the sight of the rooster, lost all the wits he had. He seized the little rooster and stuffed him into the pocket of his big baggy pantaloons. "Now I have you, I'll keep you," he shrieked, "so you don't get out again." But the little small rooster sang, "Pour the bees out my throat, pour the bees all out, pour the bees all out." And his throat poured out all the bees in the Sultan's pantaloons, and the bees began to sting the Sultan. They stung him and stung him and stung him. The Sultan screeched and he screeched. He slapped at his pantaloons. He danced on one foot, but he could not stop the stinging. So at last he yelled to his slave, "Give this rooster back his penny, and let him go from the palace. I must have peace again." So the slaves cut a great big slit in the Sultan's pantaloons. Out flew the little small rooster and the swarm of angry bees. Then the Sultan heaved a sigh of relief. The slaves gave the rooster his penny and let him go from the palace. And the little small rooster flew home and gave the poor woman the penny. The old woman bought all she needed to make herself cozy and comfortable, and she and the little small rooster lived happily ever after. The end.